you know? Last week I bought a used car. I found my wife's dress in the back seat. My wife, there's always something. Our anniversary, I took her to dinner. I made a toast to the best woman a man ever had. The waiter joined me. I tell you, restaurants, I'm never lucky. I met my wife in a restaurant. Yeah, she told the waiter she wanted something simple. He brought me over. I tell you, with my wife, I can't relax. She can't cook, the worst cook in the world. My house, we pray after we eat. What a lousy cook. I don't think meatloaf should glow in the dark. No, I mean it. She can't cook at all. My backyard, the flies shipped in to fix the screen door. Not easy. And my wife, I got no sex life either. In my house, we put the mirror over the dog's bed. My wife. Oh, the other night she told me she wants to try something wild. She tied me to the bed. Then she put her clothes on and went out. I mean, that's the story of my life. No respect. I don't got no respect at all. Not easy. No respect at all.
Good morning. It is Thursday, April the 27th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the Star-Spangled Banner, we will have no free lunch, Trump supporter, electric military, don't be fooled, the rape of the mind, and Donald Trump. All that and more when I get back. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing and remove your hats for the national anthem of the United States of America.
Thank you. And now, there's no free lunch, 250 Economic Truths by David-Bahnsen.
Citizens who over-rely on their government to do everything not only become dependent on their government, they end up having to do whatever the government demands. In the meantime, their initiative and self-respect are destroyed. Charles G. Koch. The vicious cycle here is unspeakable. The human spirit is crushed by dependency, and the role of the individual as a serf to the authoritative wishes of he who rules metastasizes into a truly dysfunctional sort of oppression. A crushed human spirit where dignity is suffocated, all in the name of government helping those whose God-given purpose it has stripped.
And that was There's No Free Lunch by David-Bahnsen. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, this is another Stuart-Varney thing. It's a clip of the Energy Secretary who is testifying that she supports the idea of electrifying the military. Here we go.
Roll tape.
Do you support the military adopting that EV fleet by 2030?
I do, and I think we can get there as well. And I do think that reducing our reliance on the volatility of globally traded fossil fuels, where we know that global events such as the war in Ukraine can jack up prices for people back home.
Okay. Congressman August Pfluger, Republican from Texas, is with me now. Sir, you served as an Air Force pilot for 20 years. Is it possible to go all electric in the military by 2030?
So then the congressman goes ahead and says, well, can you imagine solar panels on airplanes and all this other stuff? What the left is doing, the left always likes their little tricks, and this is one of their little tricks. What they do is make a proposal that's nice and vague. Okay, so she says, we want to electrify the military. What does that mean? Exactly what does that mean, electrifying the military? Are we going to have electric firearms? Are we going to have electric tanks? Or do they mean electric as in we won't have any gas stoves in the military? That kind of thing. She didn't say. She was very vague. So, and they do this because they want to elicit a reaction from the Republicans. Get the Republicans to commit themselves, to come out and say, no, we're against this. Then the Democrats can come back and say, oh, no, we're not talking about putting solar panels on everything. We're talking about simply getting rid of gas stoves and thereby make the Republicans look like jackasses and all the people that support Republicans as jackasses. What the Republicans should be doing is baiting or eliciting from the left, in this case, the Energy Secretary, details. So what they should say is, I don't know what she's talking about. I don't know what the heck the Secretary is babbling about. And if all of them say that, I don't know what she's talking about, I don't know what she's babbling about, now she has to come out with details. Then you can go somewhere with that. You can, again, you have one of three ways. You can say no, then negotiate, or say yes with conditions. But don't allow the left to manipulate you that way. They're baiting you into giving a response, especially if you come up with pragmatic objections. They love pragmatic objections because they'll give pragmatic solutions. And when they've done that, now you're trapped. You're in a position of that you either have to accept their pragmatic solution or shut up. Don't be fooled. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the rape of the mind.
Spy mania. In totalitaria, this vicious circle of vituperation reaches its fullest flowering. Drowned in a rain of suspicion, the citizen of totalitaria suffers from terrible delusion of persecution, spy-anoia, the spy mania. He is continually on the alert, watching his fellow men. His good neighbor may at any moment become a saboteur or a traitor. The citizen of totalitaria hardly ever looks for confusion or flaws in his own soul, but projects them onto scapegoats until he himself finally becomes the victim of someone else's spy-anoia. Every citizen is constantly trying to search out everyone else's innermost thoughts, because one's own hidden thoughts are projected on one's neighbors. Thinking in itself becomes the enemy. The great fear of the inner thoughts of our fellow men is related to the general process of paranoid reevaluation of the world as a result of fear and totalitarian thinking. In the denial of human loyalty and in the constant delusion of treason and sabotage are expressed the whole infantile mythology of totalitaria and its repudiation of mature human relationships. Through interrogation, character assassination, humiliation, mental terror, and demoralization, such as happens in individual and collective brainwashing, men can be so utterly demoralized that he accepts any political system. He is nothing anymore. Why should he oppose matters? In totalitaria, there is no open policy, no free discussion, no honest difference of opinion. There is only intrigue and denunciation, with their frightening action on the masses. The strategy of wild accusation is used not only against totalitarian citizenry, but also against the rest of the world. Totalitaria needs the images of outside enemies, imaginary cruel monsters who spread plague and disease to justify its own internal troubles. The remnants of the individual citizen's conscience are calmed and held in check by a paranoid attack on the rest of the world. The enemy is poisoning our food, throwing beetles and bacteria into our crops. The myth of an imaginary world conspiracy aims at bringing the fearful citizens of totalitaria into a concerted defense against non-existent dangers. It conceals, at the same time, internal failures leading to diminishing crops and lack of food. Projecting blame onto others reinforces each citizen's sense of participation in the totalitarian community and stills the nagging internal voice demanding that he act as a self-responsible individual. The myth of external plotting also increases the individual citizen's feeling of dependence and immaturity. Now only his dictatorial leader can protect him from the evil world outside, a world which is described to him as a vast zoo inhabited by atomic dragons and hydrogen monsters.
And that was Spy Mania from The Rape of the Mind by Joost-meerlo, MD. Back in a minute. Good morning. Thank you. So here's a little clip from Stuart-Varney about apparently yesterday, the head of the teachers union, I guess National Teachers Union, was on Capitol Hill being interviewed or testifying. That's the word I'm looking for here. It was testifying on Capitol Hill. And here's a clip of a little exchange between Republican Jim Jordan and the head of the teachers union.
Jordan pressed her on what she meant when she accused the GOP of engaging in culture wars. Watch this.
Who are the extremist politicians?
I think you just heard one, sir.
So Miss Green's one of them?
I think, look,
okay, that's what you think.
I think the issue is the culture wars that are going on in schools right now, banning books, undermining teachers.
Okay.
So there you go. So what's interesting about this, number one, is that when he's basically asking her to promote her viewpoint, and usually the left is going to be happy to do that. They want to do it, though, the left does, in a rather subtle and nuanced way, but they'll be happy to promote their viewpoint. A better way of handling this from Jim Jordan's perspective or any Republican's perspective is to start off by saying, look, let's be frank here. You don't really believe in having in queer theory. You don't believe in BLM. You don't believe in all this other stuff. You don't believe in any of that. You're under pressure. You're under pressure from the Democrat Party. You're under pressure perhaps from your membership. But we know that you don't really buy into this. You don't really believe this, do you? That's a much better question. Second thing is, then she at first she answers the question. He says, "Who are the extremist politicians?" I think you just heard from one, but she doesn't want to name names, which is why he's asking her to do this. He wants her to come out in boldly come out and name names. The left doesn't want to do that. They want to hint and suggest. They want to be subtle and nuanced and let you step into a trap from which you're going to find it very difficult to extricate yourself. So, anyways, then she sidesteps and says, well, I think the issue is the culture wars in the classroom. Well, wait a minute. Where's their culture wars? Okay, that's the question to ask, the follow-up question to ask. And then she says, banning books, doing this. I said, the question would be, who's doing that? Who's banning books? And where is it happening? Put her on the defensive. And then if she starts to explain, which more than likely she's not going to want to, because then she has to deal with reality. Reality means limits. And she, as a lefty, wants to keep everything nice and fluid. Everything has to be undefined, vague, and hazy so that she can define things at will and shape her argument on the fly. And you don't want that to happen. You want to narrow her options. But anyway, so you would start off again if she comes, when she says, hey, there's a culture war. Really? Where's that going on? Where? Because I don't know of any culture war. I don't know what she's talking about. Book banning. Where's book banning going on? I haven't seen any book banning. Have you? Okay, don't concede. This is one of their little tricks to get you to concede a point. And once you've conceded, once you've confessed, it's almost impossible to take it back later on. So now you have to live with it. And the left then goes ahead and uses that confession as a foundation to make further accusations, elicit further confessions, and that's the way they go. You get deeper and deeper into the muck, and then finally you're in a position where you have to agree to something that you absolutely can't stand. Don't be fooled. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little bit of Donald Trump responding to President Biden's call, or actually his speech, saying that he's going to be running for re-election.
Biden has done to our nation in just a few short years, not even close. Thanks to Joe Biden's socialist spending calamity, American families are being decimated by the worst inflation in half a century. Banks are failing, our currency is crashing, and the dollar will soon no longer be the world standard, which will be our greatest defeat in over 200 years. Real wages have been falling 24 months in a row. In other words, under Biden, workers have gotten a pay cut each and every month for 2 straight years. We have surrendered our energy independence, just like we surrendered in Afghanistan, which we had just a short time ago, and the price of gasoline just hit a 5-month high, and it's going much higher than that. Under my leadership, we had the most secure border in U.S. history by far. Never had a border like this. Under Biden, the southern border has been abolished, and millions of illegal aliens have been released into our communities. What's happening now is beyond belief. They're coming in from mental institutions and prisons. They're all being emptied. They're being dumped into the United States of America. Many of these people are very dangerous. They're being dumped. We're like a dumping ground. Our cities have been overrun with homelessness, drug addicts, and violent criminals who are being released from jail en masse with no retribution whatsoever, while law enforcement is weaponized against law-abiding conservatives or Republicans or people they just don't like. Our children are being indoctrinated and mutilated by left-wing freaks and zealots. The senior ranks of our military have gone completely woke, and our military is suffering greatly. Biden has totally humiliated our nation on the world stage, starting with the Afghanistan disaster. Perhaps the most embarrassing event in the history of our country. It meant so much to our enemies when they watched that horrible retreat. Russia is teaming up with China. Iran is days away from a nuclear bomb, not even thinkable. Ukraine has been devastated by an invasion that would never, ever have happened if I was president. And Joe Biden has led us to the very brink of World War III. They say Trump was right about everything. Well, I'm not predicting World War III, but I will say this. We're very close, and they're only talking about nuclear weapons. On top of it all, Biden is the most corrupt president in American history, and that's not even close. Nobody can believe what's going on, with, again, no retribution whatsoever. With such a calamitous and failed presidency, it is almost inconceivable that Biden would even think of running for re-election. You know what happened in the last election? They cheated and they rigged the election. But I promise you this, when I stand on that debate stage and compare our records, it will be radical Democrats' worst nightmare, because there's never been a record as bad as they have. And our country has never been through so much. There has never been a greater contrast between two successive administrations in all of American history, ours being greatness and theirs being failure. With your support in the election, we will defeat Joe Biden in 2024. We will rescue our economy. We will crush inflation. We will stop the invasion on our southern border. We will restore our nation's dignity, and we will prevent World War III from happening. Together, we will all make America great again. Thank you.
And that was Donald Trump responding to Joe Biden's 2024 campaign announcement. Back in a minute. Okay, so again, a little bit more Stuart-Varney real quick here. He's talking with a Trump supporter, and so here we go.
You're ignoring something here.
Tell me.
A lot of people love Trump's policies, but are really turned off by his behavior. Now, in New York City yesterday, there were graphic details presented in court about how Donald Trump allegedly raped someone in a department store many years ago. Now, he's got to get over that kind of thing. You think he can get over it?
Stuart, listen, regardless of what somebody might think about the tone of Donald Trump's presidency, if you look at where the country is now compared to where the country was 3 years ago, the choice is abundantly clear. I mean, this is garbage what we're seeing from the Democrats, from Joe Biden, from this administration. They are destroying the United States of America.
So, I'm not going to play the rest of it. So he's handling this wrong. When Stuart-Varney comes out and says, well, there are people, and again, he's just making it up. He's doing the same thing the left does, and that's he's making an arbitrary claim. You got to do to him what you would do to any Democrat, which is make him prove it. And you do that by just simple denial, simply contradicting him. Well, there's many people that love his policies, but they're turned off by his tone or his message or whatever, and you just simply say, no, there isn't. That's the way I would handle it. I would say, no, there isn't. There's nobody I have ever met that is turned off by Donald Trump's, by any part of Donald Trump. They just don't exist. Now, if Stuart-Varney comes out and says, well, I'm one of them, then I'm going to say, you're the only one that I've met. Period. And so now he's put in a position where he gets to be the odd man out. He's the only person in America who doesn't like something about Donald Trump unless and until he can prove otherwise. And again, unless he and I have sat down ahead of time and agreed to what constitutes evidence and what constitutes proof, he's going to have a very, very difficult time doing that. So again, this Trump supporter could do better. It wasn't a really bad response, because basically what he's doing is changing the subject. No matter what you think about his character or his personality, his policies, and he goes back to the policies. But the strongest answer, and you always want to go with your strong suit, go with the strongest answer. What is it they say in chess? Always make your best move. Because there's best moves, second best moves, third best moves. And what this gentleman is doing right now is he's giving maybe a second best or third best answer. And if you keep answering questions like what Stuart-Varney is asking in a second best, third best, pretty soon you lose. You find yourself in an utterly losing position. So always go with your strongest answer. Always make your best move. And the best move here is simple contradiction. Make him prove it, because otherwise what you're doing is you're conceding the point. And once you've conceded, it's like a confession. It's a statement against interest, and you'll have a hell of a time if later you decide, wait a minute, I didn't really mean that. Well, now you're going to play hell trying to convince people that you didn't mean to say it. Because now any statement after your confession is going to the contrary of your confession, is going to sound like that you are sore loser, sour grapes, that you are trying to get away with something. That's the word. Those are the words I was looking for. So again, when you're faced with a situation like that, if you're in a position where somebody says, well, Donald Trump's policies, this, that, and the other thing, but his personality, you just say, well, you're the first person or ask them, do you object to it? What is it precisely that you object to? That's the other thing you can do in terms of getting them to prove it. Just simply ask them for details. So 2 ways to handle this. The strongest one is simply to contradict them or deny it, and then the other very strong one, but not as strong as the first. So let's say second best would be to say to ask for details and put them on the spot. Make them prove it. So, like I said, if the left is going to win in this country, we need to make them earn it. Back in a minute. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. So I'm reminding you that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.